Hello, welcome to Bourbon and a Baby. My name is Jay. Max will not be joining us today because Max is a baby and babies don't drink Larceny. Alright, and my review today is Larceny. This is a wheated bourbon, 92 proof, from Heaven Hill Distillery. I'm a huge fan of a lot of what Heaven Hill Distillery puts out, and I've traditionally been a huge Larceny fan. So this is going to be kind of fun because as you can see, this bottle here is getting towards the bottom. And interesting story about Larceny. When I bought my first bottle of Larceny, I had never tried it before, and I brought it home. I was excited. I opened it up, and I absolutely hated it. I did not like it whatsoever. I went back to it about a day or two later, still didn't like it, and then I let it sit for a while, maybe 2 or 3 months, and then I tried it again, and I was like, oh, why did I not like this? Because this is delicious. And I've been a Larceny fan ever since. So as I pour here, Larceny is a wheated bourbon, so there is no rye in the mash bill. It is corn, wheat, and malted barley. So similar to like Maker's Mark, which is a wheated bourbon, or Weller, your Weller line from Buffalo Trace, those are wheated bourbons. Some other ones out there as well, but this in particular is really marketed at the Maker's Mark fans. It comes in at 92 proof though, which is a few proof points up from Maker's. I personally think it's a lot more flavorful, and I like this a lot better than your regular offering from Maker's Mark. So yeah, let's check this out. Let's go and see what we get on the nose. Get a lot of oak up front. They don't have an age statement on Larceny, and I'll be honest, I don't even know what kind of the general consensus is. I would assume it's somewhere between 6 and 7 years old, but that's just a guess from me. If anybody does know around what they tend to be, let me know in the comments below. I get some cinnamon. And yeah, just like a lot of the barrel influence. Like I mentioned, this has no rye in the mash bill, but I'm getting some of the darker notes that you would traditionally get from a rye or even a high rye bourbon mash bill. Getting a little bit of baking spices and a little bit of caramel as well. So let's see how that translates to the palate. Cheers. That oak and barrel influence really comes through, especially on that first sip. Can really get that. It's like almost like a dryness that comes through, but then like a kind of like a layer of caramel. You can taste kind of the char from the barrel as well. Kind of that a little tinge of like smokiness, and then like some of those darker baking spices type notes that I mentioned on the nose as well. Let me take a second sip here and see what we think. Definitely get that cinnamon as well that I hit on the nose. And this is so interesting. Because it's a wheated bourbon, traditionally wheated bourbons tend to be a lot more sweet, and I think this is less sweet than most wheated bourbons. It's more, I think, on the spicy side, but there is kind of like this layer of maybe like this like light layer of like buttered popcorn, or maybe even like buttered caramel corn coming through as well, and that's more so on the finish. But there's just a lot going on. This is a very complex bourbon, especially at the price point. You can get this anywhere from 25 to 30 bucks, which I think is a fantastic price point for what you're getting, because there's a lot going on. And as I talk, the finish, I'm getting more of the caramel coming through. So it's kind of like spicy up front. Then it kind of smooths, gets some of that buttery aspect, and then like mellows into some of those sweeter notes like that caramel coming through on the finish. So just like a really good experience. Yeah, and like again though, especially up front, a lot of oak, a lot of that oak, and it's dry. It really kind of dries out your mouth a little bit, which kind of makes you want to go back in for another sip. So this, I'm kind of, as I've been drinking it, changing my tune on. Not changing my tune that I like it. I really enjoy this, but I've always kind of pointed people to this. It's something that people say, you know, what's a good bourbon for a beginner, and I've always kind of pointed them to Larceny. I might be changing my tune. I think there might be a little bit too much going on to say this is a good beginner bourbon. Now, it's not overly hot at 92 proof, but it does, you know, it does bring some heat. But I think this is more like a good secondary bourbon. So once you're like really committed to advancing your bourbon palate, I think this is like a good second stop or third stop, but not necessarily a good starting point. Just because of some of that dryness that from the oak, and you know, that kind of that spiciness up front. So I think that might turn people, a new bourbon drinker, off. Even though this is something in the past I've said is a great beginner bourbon, definitely changing my tune on that. A good second or third stop on your bourbon journey. Yeah, and there's even like almost like a mustiness, which sounds gross, but it's just more of an interesting feeling. Maybe it's maybe musty is not the best word. It's kind of a nuttiness, and I don't necessarily think like a straight peanut note, almost like a mixed nut note, like there's a little bit of peanut in there, but more like maybe some cashew as well. Maybe like a one or two almonds in the mix. So yeah, like kind of a mixed nut flavor coming through here as well. All right, so that's my thoughts on Larceny. Tell me what you think. Do you enjoy Larceny? Do you think it's a good beginner bourbon? Like I said initially, I used to point beginners to this, but I think maybe it's not necessarily a great beginner bourbon. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think of Larceny. You can follow Max and myself on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're at Bourbon and a Baby on all of those platforms. Max and myself also have a merchandise shop on Spreadshirt. I'll throw the link in the description below. And check out my good friends, RWP Supply Company, where you can get yourself a shirt like this. I'll put the link to their shop in the description below too. Even though the creator of RWP Supply Company, Ed, even though he's not a fan of Larceny, shout out to them. Thanks for checking us out today. Cheers. Yeah, that nuttiness and then the oakiness really kind of shining through now. But yeah, this is a fun one.